The millionaire abandoned his wife, and 23 years later was paralyzed upon seeing her with a young man identical to him in a luxury restaurant. He approached but first, remember to subscribe to our channel so we can keep sharing incredible stories. Ethan Walker was a man of unrelenting ambition. Tall, with slicked-back dark hair and sharp blue eyes, he had built his fortune through a mix of shrewd business moves and ruthless decisions. For years, Madison Brooks had been by his side, kind-hearted and supportive, the counterbalance to his unyielding drive. Yet as Ethan's wealth grew, so did his disdain for anything or anyone he deemed a distraction. One evening, over an extravagant dinner in their Manhattan penthouse, Ethan broke the news. "Madison," he said coldly, setting his glass of vintage wine on the table, "this marriage has run its course. I've decided to move on." Madison, stunned, struggled to comprehend his words. "Move on? Ethan, what are you talking about? We've built a life together." His gaze didn't falter. "You don't fit into the vision I have for my future anymore. I'm filing for divorce. The arrangements have already been made." Without a chance to fight or understand, Madison was thrust out of the life they had built together. With no family nearby and no part in Ethan's staggering wealth, she was forced to leave the glittering city behind. She settled in Maplewood, a small, unassuming town in upstate New York. It was a far cry from the skyscrapers and high-end boutiques she once frequented, but the community welcomed her with open arms. Slowly, she began to rebuild her life. With a passion for baking and little else to her name, Madison opened a quaint cafe on the corner of Main Street. The cafe, aptly named New Dawn, became a sanctuary for Madison. The smell of fresh coffee and the sound of cheerful chatter filled the once quiet space that now mirrored her cautious hope for the future. The locals admired her resilience, unaware of the storm she had weathered. Though Madison was creating a new life, the nights were long and filled with memories she wished she could forget. Ethan's betrayal haunted her, but it also ignited a determination to prove to herself, and perhaps to him, that she could thrive without his shadow. Meanwhile, Ethan immersed himself further into his business empire. Surrounded by power and luxury, he dismissed any thoughts of his former life. Yet as the years passed, a gnawing emptiness began to creep in, one that no amount of wealth or success could fill. In Maplewood, Madison found solace in simplicity, discovering strength she never knew she had. Her story was just beginning, though she had no idea how intertwined it still was with the man who had shattered her world. With her cafe thriving, Madison stood poised for a new chapter, one that would eventually confront the ghosts of her past in ways she could never have imagined. Madison's cafe, New Dawn, quickly became a cornerstone of Maplewood life. Nestled between the town's post office and library, the cafe was a haven for students, retirees, and families. The scent of warm croissants and freshly brewed coffee spilled onto the cobblestone street every morning, a beacon of comfort for those seeking respite from the everyday hustle. Over time, Madison's business acumen emerged. What started as a modest cafe evolved into a thriving enterprise, with locals lining up each morning for her pastries. She introduced themed events, poetry nights, local artist showcases, and community fundraisers, which made her cafe more than a business. It became a gathering place. Yet beneath her success, Madison harbored a profound secret. 2 years after her separation from Ethan, she discovered she was pregnant. The revelation was both a shock and a blessing. She had been certain her connection to Ethan had ended, yet here she was, carrying a part of him into her new life. Madison resolved to raise the child alone. She refused to contact Ethan, determined that her child would grow up surrounded by love and integrity, values she no longer associated with him. Her son Noah was born on a crisp autumn morning, with eyes as piercingly blue as his father's. From the start, Noah exhibited a precocious intelligence and an uncanny resemblance to Ethan. As a toddler, he shared his mother's kindness, often offering a cookie to strangers at the cafe or helping elderly patrons with their chairs. His charm and sharp wit grew more pronounced with age, leaving Madison both proud and cautious. She worried what would happen if he ever learned the truth about his father. Ethan, meanwhile, was unaware of the life growing without him. Over the years, his empire expanded. Lavish parties, private jets, and magazine covers marked his life, yet none of it brought him peace. His relationships were shallow, his connections transactional. Occasionally, a pang of regret surfaced when he thought of Madison, but he buried it under layers of ambition. Noah grew into a young man with an undeniable spark. At 21, he was the embodiment of Madison's dedication and sacrifice. He helped manage the cafe and studied business at a local university. His resemblance to Ethan became more striking as he aged, with the same strong jawline and commanding presence. Locals often remarked on it, though Madison dismissed their comments with a polite smile. One day, an invitation arrived that would shift their world. A former Maplewood resident, now a prominent figure in New York City's culinary scene, invited Madison to showcase her cafe at an upscale event. It was an opportunity of a lifetime, one Madison couldn't refuse. She decided to bring Noah along as her assistant. The trip to Manhattan, the city she had fled all those years ago, filled her with a mix of nostalgia and apprehension. For Noah, it was an adventure. For Madison, it was a confrontation with a past she had carefully avoided. As they arrived at the luxurious restaurant where the event was held, Madison marveled at how different her life had become. But just as she began to feel at ease, a figure from her past walked in. Ethan. The encounter would mark the beginning of revelations neither Madison nor Ethan could have anticipated. The air in the restaurant was charged with an atmosphere of opulence and excitement. Crystal chandeliers cast shimmering light across tables adorned with floral arrangements, and the low hum of conversation filled the space. Madison adjusted the display of pastries she'd brought from New Dawn, her hands steady, despite her heart pounding at the thought of showcasing her work in such a high-profile event. Noah, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, exuded confidence. His charismatic demeanor caught the attention of several attendees who marveled at his resemblance to someone they couldn't quite place. Madison watched him with pride, her son's enthusiasm reminding her of why she had fought so hard to build this life for them. As the evening unfolded, Madison found herself mingling with notable chefs and restaurateurs. She was discussing the story behind her cafe when she felt a shift in the room's energy. Turning instinctively, her breath caught as she locked eyes with Ethan Walker. Ethan had aged gracefully, his salt and pepper hair adding an air of sophistication to his chiseled features. He wore a dark suit that fit him perfectly, his presence commanding attention as easily as it always had. But in this moment, his confident stride faltered. His piercing blue eyes were fixed on Madison, then shifted to Noah, who stood nearby, chatting with a guest. Ethan's face went pale. The resemblance was undeniable. Noah's sharp jawline, striking eyes, and even the way he gestured were reflections of himself. The sight of the young man left him frozen, a flood of questions and realizations paralyzing him. Madison noticed his reaction, her stomach tightening with dread. She turned away, hoping to avoid him, but it was too late. Ethan, regaining his composure, approached her with deliberate steps, his gaze shifting between her and Noah. "Madison," he said, his voice low but filled with incredulity. "Is this—" Before he could finish, Noah noticed Ethan and joined them, flashing his characteristic smile. "Hi," he said, offering his hand. "I'm Noah Brooks, and you are—" Ethan hesitated, the words catching in his throat. "Ethan Walker," he said finally, shaking Noah's hand. His gaze lingered, searching the young man's face for answers. Noah, unaware of the tension, continued, "Nice to meet you, Mr. Walker. Are you here for the event?" Madison interjected, her tone sharp. "Noah, why don't you check on the pastry display? I'll handle things here." Confused but obliging, Noah excused himself. The moment he was out of earshot, Ethan turned to Madison, his expression a mixture of anger, shock, and something she couldn't quite decipher. "Madison," he hissed, keeping his voice low. "That boy, is he—" Madison's heart raced, her carefully constructed world trembling. She straightened her posture, meeting his gaze with defiance. "What difference would it make, Ethan? You made your choice to walk away years ago." Ethan's jaw tightened, his voice soft but laced with urgency. "I deserve to know if he's my son." "You forfeited that right when you abandoned us," Madison shot back, her voice trembling with suppressed emotion. Ethan took a step closer, his tone softening. "Madison, please, I need to know." Before she could respond, Noah returned, holding a tray of pastries. The sight of the two of them together, a father and son who didn't yet know the truth, was almost too much for Madison to bear. "Everything okay here?" Noah asked, sensing the tension. Madison forced a smile. "Yes, Noah, Mr. Walker was just leaving." Ethan's eyes lingered on Noah for a moment before he nodded, a storm of emotions brewing within him. "We'll talk soon, Madison," he said, his voice quiet but firm. As he walked away, Madison exhaled shakily, knowing this was only the beginning. Ethan's presence threatened to upend the life she had painstakingly built, and she wasn't sure she could stop it. The next few days were a whirlwind of unease for Madison. The encounter with Ethan had unsettled her deeply, and she couldn't shake the image of him staring at Noah with a mixture of shock and recognition. She knew it was only a matter of time before he reached out, but the question was how and when. Her fears were confirmed one quiet evening at the cafe. The bustling crowd had thinned, and Madison was wiping down tables while Noah prepared to close up for the night. The sound of the doorbell chiming drew her attention. She turned to see Ethan standing in the doorway, his imposing figure backlit by the streetlights outside. "Hello, Madison," he said, his voice calm but resolute. Her heart sank. "Ethan," she replied curtly, glancing nervously at Noah, who had stopped mid-task to observe the unexpected visitor. Ethan approached the counter, his piercing gaze focused entirely on her. "We need to talk," he said. Noah, sensing the tension, stepped forward. "Is something wrong, Mom?" Madison hesitated, torn between protecting her son and confronting the past she had worked so hard to bury. "Noah," she said softly, "could you give us a moment?" Noah frowned but nodded, retreating to the back of the cafe. Once he was out of earshot, Madison turned to Ethan, her voice low and firm. "What do you want?" "You know what I want," Ethan replied, his tone unyielding. "I need to know if Noah is my son." Madison's hands tightened around the cloth she was holding. "And what if he is, Ethan? What difference does it make now? You left. You made your choice." Ethan took a step closer, his expression softening. "Madison, I didn't know. If I had—" "You would have what?" she interrupted, her voice rising. "Stuck around? Fought for us? You didn't even look back, Ethan. You walked away without a second thought." The weight of her words hung heavily between them. Ethan looked down, his jaw clenched as he absorbed the truth of her accusation. "I made mistakes," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I deserve a chance to make things right." Madison laughed bitterly. "You don't get to swoop in and play the hero after all this time. Noah has a life, a good life, without you." Ethan's gaze shifted toward the back of the cafe, where Noah had disappeared. "But he deserves to know who his father is," he said softly. Madison's breath caught. She had spent over 2 decades shielding Noah from the truth, convincing herself it was for the best. But now, with Ethan standing before her, she realized the decision might no longer be hers to make. Before she could respond, Noah reappeared, his brows furrowed with curiosity and concern. "Is everything okay?" he asked, looking between them. Ethan straightened, his composure returning. "Actually, no," he said, his voice steady. "There's something I need to tell you, Noah, something important." Madison stepped forward, panic rising in her chest. "Ethan, don't—" "No, Madison," Ethan said firmly, his eyes meeting hers. "He has a right to know." Noah looked at them both, confusion etched across his face. "Know what?" Ethan took a deep breath, his gaze fixed on the young man who so clearly reflected him. "Noah," he began, his voice heavy with emotion, "I'm your father." The words hung in the air, a thunderclap in the silence. Noah's eyes widened, disbelief flashing across his face. "What are you talking about?" he demanded, turning to Madison. "Mom, is this true?" Madison's throat tightened. She opened her mouth to speak, but found no words. Finally, she nodded, tears welling in her eyes. Noah staggered back, the weight of the revelation hitting him like a tidal wave. "All these years," he said, his voice shaking, "you never told me." "I was trying to protect you," Madison whispered, her voice cracking. "Protect me?" Noah exclaimed, anger and hurt mingling in his tone. "From what? From him? Or from the truth?" Ethan stepped forward, his expression earnest. "Noah, I didn't know about you. If I had, you would have what?" Noah cut him off, his voice sharp. "Been there, like you were for her." He gestured to Madison, who flinched at the bitterness in his words. Ethan's face fell, but he didn't back down. "I can't change the past," he said quietly, "but I want to be part of your future. If you'll let me." Noah stared at him, his emotions warring within. Without another word, he turned and walked out of the cafe, the doorbell's chime echoing in the silence he left behind. Madison sank into a chair, her tears spilling freely. Ethan stood frozen, the weight of his choices pressing down on him like never before. For the first time in years, both of them were forced to confront the consequences of their actions and the uncertain path ahead. Ethan found himself standing outside the cafe in the cool night air, watching Noah walk away. For a man accustomed to solving problems with a signature or a phone call, the feeling of helplessness was foreign and deeply unsettling. He didn't follow Noah. He knew better than to push too hard now, but he vowed to find a way to fix this fractured moment. Inside, Madison sat silently at one of the corner tables, her face pale and drawn. The cafe felt eerily quiet, despite the faint hum of appliances and the occasional sounds of traffic from outside. Ethan re-entered, closing the door softly behind him. "Are you happy now?" Madison asked, her voice brittle. Ethan took a seat across from her, his expression uncharacteristically vulnerable. "No," he admitted, "but I'm not here to make myself happy, Madison. I want to make this right. For you, for Noah." Madison shook her head, her fingers gripping the edge of the table. "You don't get to come back after all these years and act like you care. He's my son. I've raised him alone. You don't understand what that's cost me." "I can't undo the past," Ethan said, his tone steady but filled with regret. "But I can be here now. For both of you." Madison stared at him for a long moment, her mind racing. For years, she had convinced herself that Noah was better off without Ethan, that she was strong enough to shoulder the weight of his absence. But tonight, she had seen the raw pain in her son's eyes, and it made her question everything. "Prove it," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan leaned forward. "How?" "You say you want to make things right?" Madison asked, her eyes locked on his. "Then show me. Show Noah. Actions speak louder than words, Ethan. If you want to be part of his life, you'll have to earn it." Ethan nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. "I'll do whatever it takes," he promised. The next few weeks were challenging. Noah, still reeling from the revelation, avoided Ethan entirely. Madison worked tirelessly to mend the fragile balance in their lives, while Ethan found himself in unfamiliar territory, waiting. He reached out to Noah through letters and messages, each one expressing his regret and his desire to build a relationship. It was a cold Saturday morning when Noah finally agreed to meet Ethan. The two of them sat across from each other at a park bench, the tension palpable. "I don't know what you want from me," Noah said, his tone guarded. "I don't want anything," Ethan replied, "except a chance to get to know you." Noah studied him, searching for any sign of insincerity. "You walked out on her," he said bluntly. "You left her to raise me on her own. How do I trust you now?" Ethan sighed, his gaze dropping. "You're right to be angry. I made terrible choices, but I didn't know about you, Noah. If I had—" He paused, shaking his head. "It doesn't matter what I say. What matters is what I do from here on out." For the first time, Noah saw something in Ethan's eyes that resembled genuine remorse. It didn't erase the years of absence, but it planted the smallest seed of possibility. Their tentative relationship grew slowly, marked by awkward conversations and guarded moments. Madison remained cautious, unsure if she could trust Ethan's intentions, but she saw glimpses of hope as father and son began to connect. One evening, Ethan approached Madison with an idea. "I want to create something for Noah," he said, "something that shows him I'm committed." Madison folded her arms, skeptical. "What do you have in mind?" "A foundation," Ethan explained, "in his name. Something that supports young entrepreneurs, people like him, with big dreams but limited resources. It's a way to give back and build something meaningful for his future." The proposal caught Madison off guard. It was grand, yes, but it also felt sincere. "You think this will fix everything?" she asked. "No," Ethan admitted, "but it's a start." The foundation became a reality, and Noah's name was at its helm. At the launch event, Madison watched from the sidelines as Ethan stood on stage beside Noah, addressing a room filled with supporters. She couldn't help but feel a flicker of pride for her son and, grudgingly, for Ethan. In time, their fractured family began to heal. Trust didn't come easily, but through effort and consistency, Ethan began to carve a place in their lives. Madison, too, found herself letting go of the bitterness she had carried for so long. One evening, as the three of them sat together at the cafe, laughing over a story Noah shared from college, Madison realized something. The life she had fought so hard to protect wasn't perfect, but it was hers. And perhaps there was room for redemption after all.